Disclaimer alert.
No, because on the first day you just read your resolution, the second day it's your policy statement, and the third day is...
So Friday, you get there, you go with this, sorry, and people give you, and people sign it, so you get a sheet. And
Basically,
What are we doing, Abdullah?
this is our no paper. We're just about to guillotine this car. We've got 100 different copies here.
Yeah, that cost me quite a lot.
When it finishes, they're going to look like that. So we've got a pink little watermark as well. Perfect. So yeah,
Let me see that watermark, I need a close-up.
and take a look again. That's the watermark right
Oh,
there. Anyway, come
I
on.
love me a good palm tree. Yeah, it's too weak.
Look how smooth that is. Oi, Team Saudi.
Hi.
Hello.
I asked about hi.
Hello.
I asked if I had to bring...
Look, all official now. We've got a lanyard, Brandon. Have you got a lanyard?
No.
No.
Hasn't.
Look at that.
Told me that I already look Spanish enough to actually get one, so.
Oh, okay.
Oak, no, the one outside Oak.
How cute is this little flag?
Closer to the reception. The one closer to the reception.
Not so cute.
The use of landmines, full stop. We're saying in terms of
kind of when it's just a different
prevention of crime, warfare, securing.
When we talk about crime, we're talking justice, right? The way I see it, you are killing people for committing a crime, which doesn't seem like a democratic.
That is the way it is at the minute. What we're highlighting is hundreds of hunting lines, which are clearly located. So, for example, a couple of nobody's aware of. If traffickers were aware of the threat that they faced, they wouldn't perhaps do what they do. It's more,
Okay, so it's a deterrent.
yeah, it's deterrent. That's more what we're trying to get at.
Does the deterrent have to be lethal?
That's their
Because
choice.
I think in a world which is so much focused on justice, and you know, when you come into an Islamic country and we're talking about justice, then obviously we can't be killing people.
The problem is that these other countries, they want to ban the use of landmines.
Okay.
And a country like Saudi Arabia, when you've got Yemen on your border, it's really...
I can justify that because that is a war zone. Civilians know.
Well, exactly. We want to guarantee your right to be able to use those mines
Bro,
in a
don't
war
try and
zone.
twist it. Look, civilians know that there's issues there, there's a chance of death, but if you're putting landmines on a normal border, it is, no matter what the intention is, there is a guarantee that if you're using landmines for 100 years, there will be casualties that died accidentally. You know, there'll be immigrants, there'll be refugees.
Those landmines aren't just... Okay, so these landmines aren't just laid like with no signs.
They're on the border, aren't they?
No, as in, they're on the border, yeah, but there are signs saying warning.
Smugglers don't just smuggle equipment, they smuggle humans as well. Right? Most refugees come in through smuggling, right? And so those refugees, according to this resolution, are getting blown to pieces.
Yeah, but smuggled through lorries and stuff like that. They're not on the roads, are they? If mines aren't. I mean, they're not even going to propel them over the border fence.
You can't.
I'm not working now. Who are you working?
Sideman.
Loser with the shit hair.
Oh.
On the question of international collaboration to reduce terrorism, Saudi Arabia understands the exponentially growing threat to global stability that terrorism poses. Deaths from terror have increased tenfold since the millennium, and unfortunately so have our efforts to help reduce it. Saudi Arabia ardently believes that ever stronger global relationships are required to make the current counter-terrorism campaigns effective. We've contributed prominently to help achieve this goal. We are the founders of the Islamic Military Alliance, which is a 39-member strong military coalition, united in providing support to regions in desperate need of liberation from terror. This vision, however, will not become conceivable unless as a united globe we work jointly and completely transparently, discarding outdated stereotypes we may have for each other that may incline us to a position of dislike for the other party, and realise that terrorism is a looming threat for every one of us. It is consequently in our deepest interests to ensure the civilians of our nation are educated thoroughly about the true state of world terrorism affairs, to propagate national unity against extremism, ultimately to make it less likely that civilians succumb to propaganda techniques that are employed by modern terrorist organizations. I think the way to reduce discrimination in terms of Islam is education programs. As you'll see, the figures show that the lower education countries in the world tend to be the higher religious percentage countries. Therefore, it is very easy for terrorist organizations to persuade those civilians that their way of perceiving a religion is right because they're not educated in the right way. So I think education is really the way forward in reducing discrimination, showing that these kind of worldviews are not correct.
I like it.
What is it?
What about what they were doing in their country, not anything to do with?
So everybody was kind of like, well, why are we going to sign this because it's only going to benefit you? Which I completely get,
So the proposition is to protect borders against what the delegation understands to be crimes such as smuggling. The delegation's question is, what is stopping the country of Egypt from using a normal judicial system, just like every other country in the world, to prosecute these criminals instead of simply blowing them up?
Egypt has never used landmines to deal with smugglers. Egypt has an established independent judiciary which deals with the civilian in the area, which isn't Egypt's fault since Egypt has...
Right to respond.
Denied. Sweden?
We'd just like to add that we will never stop condemning same-sex marriage, and we would encourage other Arab states to never stop condemning same-sex marriage either, and respect the sovereignty of all Arab states. However, do acknowledge the fact that you did follow legislation on that. We appreciate that.
Point of order granted by Canada.
That this is submitted by Saudi Arabia, but this is jointly the opinion of Syria, Pakistan, Italy, Germany and Brazil as well. Distinguished guests, we would like to declare terrorism as criminal acts intended or calculated to provoke a state of terror in the general public, a group of persons or particular persons for political purposes, and in any circumstance unjustifiable, whatever the considerations of a political, philosophical, ideological, racial, ethnic, religious, or any other nature that may be invoked in justifying them. And this is defined in the United Nations General Assembly of 1994. Defining international collaboration as the process of two or more nations working together to realize or achieve something successfully. Collaboration is very similar, but more closely aligned than cooperation. Aware of the Anti-Terrorism Act of 1997, which suggests upgraded security and continuity to tackle terrorist activities and organizations. Concerned with access to weapons of mass destruction by terrorist organizations in the majority of countries of whom belong to the United Nations. Disturbed by the fact that Counter-Terrorism Implementation Task Force only consists of 38 out of 193 members of the United Nations. Recalling the 9/11 bombings as a turning point in increasing security over the nuclear arsenals and understanding the dangers of breakdown of security all around the globe, showing a great improvement in the reduction of terrorism with multilateral cooperation. Number 1. Promoting and protecting human rights while pursuing counter-terrorism efforts in a challenge for all United Nations participants. International collaboration will allow this to become achievable with support. Number 2. Request member states to act on counter-terrorism in a multilateral cooperation with increasing security over nuclear arsenals. Number 3. Proposes member states to not allow security lapses in the countries participating in the United Nations. And finally, we urge all member states to A. Establish cooperation between member states to create a stronger fight against terrorism by increasing security and understanding of terrorist organizations. B. Increasing the number of anti-terror courts within all countries. C. Punishing terrorist organizations and those involved in terrorist crimes under the Anti-Terrorism Act of 1997 with a strict line. However, also educating civilians on radicalization to directly counter propaganda from right-wing organizations and terrorist groups.
Uganda, as with many resolutions put forward today, finds issue with the funding of this situation. In Operative Clause 4, mainly subsections B, C and D, B and C, apologies, It says that you would like to install education and anti-terrorist fronts in the countries, but there is nowhere throughout the resolution that would talk about a UN fund or a US fund or any fund in which to implement these places to reduce this terrorism. What parts of the resolution can be amended or suggestions are given by the delegation that can put funding into anti-terrorist fronts in every country that requires them?
Okay, so the idea of, I think the problem was the education systems that we are trying to implement. The idea of that is to establish the systems within pre-existing education fronts, and also to just essentially promote a culture of disapproval of the terrorist worldview, to ensure that it is not acceptable. And this can also be done by making prosecution as transparent as possible, which Saudi Arabia has been doing very well in the past few years, just to make it clear to the public that this is not acceptable, while also maintaining human rights of prisoners, to minimize the chance of terrorist groups using harsh treatment of prisoners to show that, say, the government's being evil or anything like that. So it's more about promoting a culture of rejecting the terrorist ideology passively.
So Latvia's concern was that the troops remaining for a week or 2 weeks, or that would fundamentally cause, it could provoke Russia to expand into Latvia. However, in this meeting, we request the delegation to secure the fact that Russia will not expand its military for the time its troops are in Latvia. Thank you.
Okay, so I want to talk about how you, because I fully commend what you said.
Delegates, please refrain from using personal.
Sorry, the delegate from Uruguay fully commends what you said. It does talk about a human rights investigation when it talks about, where is it? Suggesting a UN investigation into human rights. So the resolution fundamentally agrees with what we're saying. When it comes to, obviously, for all troops to leave Latvia,
missing someone. Missing someone.